Good.
Yes.
The broadcast is live.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hey, look at that. Take that shot. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming. Interesting that we had to fight through the technology at a tech talk. I'm glad I'm not from Google. All I'm saying is I'm glad I'm not from Google, because it's a Google Hangout, and I would have been responsible for fixing it. So I want to spend a little bit of time with you this afternoon, give you a sense of some of the technology that we run on Wall Street. I'll give you a little background about who I am, who is TD Ameritrade. We'll talk a little bit about sort of the big pieces of tech on the street, and then some of the cool, innovative stuff that we're working on now. And at the end, we'll open it for Q&A. Sound good?
Yeah.
And if it turns out not to be interesting and totally boring, sounds like you at least got free cookies out of it. So it's a win already. Because we have lawyers, I always put up what they call a safe harbor, which is the standard legal disclaimer. Somehow, I don't think they read mine very closely, because this has been technically reviewed and approved by my compliance department and my corporate communications department. So I will highlight that any prediction I make that turns out to be wrong, I already told you, I was just guessing anyway. And anything that's right, I'm going to come back and say I told you so after. I assume you can see the slides, yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So one slide and one slide only. On the obligatory, who the heck is TD Ameritrade? We are an online broker-dealer. If you've heard of companies like E-Trade, then you kind of have a sense of who we are. Just think about twice as big. In fact, we're the biggest in our category on the street. We've got 6.5 million client accounts. We're not a bank, but people deposit money with us and use that money to buy and sell stocks. And the assets we have on deposit from our clients right now is just around $700 billion. We do between 400,000 and 500,000 trades on a typical day. So that's what our clients are buying and selling. That number goes up as high as 1 million trades a day. So that makes us a pretty big percentage of the activity on Wall Street. We are, I mentioned, really a broker. We are registered as a broker-dealer, but the difference is if you're a dealer, you don't just help clients buy and sell shares by connecting them to other people. You actually will buy and sell shares and take a position against your customer. We do not do that. We simply facilitate people who want to buy or sell options, shares, commodities, futures, stuff like that. If you are not a client, and if your parents aren't a client, given the 6.5 million funded accounts, there's a pretty good chance that at least one of your neighbors is. And we look forward to you guys and gals graduating, starting to make some real money, and then becoming clients. And so that was my obligatory pitch from a sales perspective. The idea of a discount broker is, what we really do is we take technology and we use it to commoditize the traditional stockbroker industry, right? So in the past, wealthy people could afford their own private stockbroker at a Morgan Stanley or a Goldman Sachs, and they paid a lot of money to buy and sell shares. What we do is we replicate what we call wirehouses do, but we use tech to make it cheap. So we can help you execute a trade at $10 instead of the $300, $400, $500 you'd pay to a traditional wirehouse, and really bring the tools and the technology that the wealthy have always had at their disposal down to the 99%. And so we're all about making trading commoditized and available, and commoditizing the inefficient processes at the wirehouses through tech. That started years ago with something called touch-tone trading. Those of you who remember landline telephones, I'm going to guess it's none of you, but when phones went from rotary dials, which you'll see in a museum, to touch tones, which you will soon see in a museum, we were able to use touch tone phones to actually help people buy and sell shares. With the advent of the web, we moved into web-based trading, and now more and more we're moving to app-based trading, which I'll describe more of in a little bit. The other thing is we're doing so much at scale, we can make a lot of stuff free. We don't charge $10 for everything. If you want to look up a quote and you're a client, it's free. If you want research and you're a client, it's free. If you want news, if you want education, if you want practice trading systems, they're all free. And so, again, by introducing tech, we're able to deliver stuff at a super low price point or a zero price point. Make sense?
Yep.
Am I in the right meeting?
Yes.
Oh, good. All right. Let's talk for a couple of minutes about the basic structure of the street so you have a sense of where we sit and what we do. And then as we get into the tech more, I'll use some of these terms. But, you know, at its most simplistic level, somebody wants to buy stock, somebody wants to sell stock. And they go to their broker. Hopefully their broker is us, but there are a number of registered brokers across the street. They place an order. The order goes in. If it's a dealer, like I said, they could take a direct position against their client. They could be advising their client to buy a stock, and they're the ones selling it to them. We think that's a little bit conflicting. In a pure play broker model like us, we get the order, and we look across the different exchanges, the New York Stock Exchange, the CBOE, if it's an option, the NASDAQ. There are a number of market centers and exchanges that we can send that order to, or we can send it to private companies called market makers, and they buy and sell stock with the hope of making a profit, and they'll take a position essentially as a buyer or seller. If it goes to an exchange, it's simply a matter of facilitating a direct trade with a buyer or seller at another firm. If it's a market maker, they'll buy it, put it on their own book, and then sell it maybe 15 minutes later, trying to capture a spread. So that's what happens. Then at the end of the day, we and all the other brokers upload our trade files to an industry utility called DTCC, and they help us match the transactions. Okay, I bought shares from somebody whose broker was at Morgan Stanley, and so they'll find the Morgan Stanley transaction and they'll match the two and then give us back the information we need to do what we call clearing, which is put into our systems on our books the fact that the transaction's been validated, the price point is right, we both have the same number of shares, the same cost, all the details are in there, and then it becomes a permanent transaction on our books. 3 days later, because we offer, as an industry, same-day performance in a nanosecond world, 3 days later, the money actually moves. And so if you sell a share of stock today, you actually don't get the money for 3 days. And that's called the settlement process. So overnight, we clear, and we get all of our books to align. And then there's a certain amount of time that the selling broker has to deliver the money to the, that the buying broker has to deliver the money to the selling broker, and at that point the shares officially trade hands. So that's a high-level view of how shares trade hands, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the background to facilitate matching and clearing hundreds of thousands, millions of these transactions at our firm every day, and then you expand that by the number of firms across the street, and you can imagine the volumes of big files being shipped around and back office processing that's happening. The technology to facilitate all of this really sits in 3 layers, and we call them offices on the street. We talk about the front office, and the front office in financial services is really our systems of engagement and all of the supporting functions. So it's the UIs, it's the downloadable apps, and then it's stuff like a quote. Tell me how much a share of Apple is going for right now. Or news. Give me updates on news about Apple. I'm thinking about buying. I got the price, but I want to know, what other people think, or if they're publishing news or financial results, stuff like that. Charts fit in here. All of the stuff that we call a system of engagement is in the front office. The middle office is what that front office connects to. And that really handles all of the orders. So you can place an order, but you can place a conditional order. You can say, I only want to buy stock if the price falls to a certain point, or I only want to sell if the price goes up above a certain point. Those are called limits. I can set other kinds of conditions. If one of my orders triggers, then I want it to trigger another order, and it would have its own limits attached to it. You can actually set up complex chains of orders and with triggers tied to each and every one of them. All of that is managed in a set of systems in our middle office, as is the order routing. Our decision about should we send your buy or sell order to a market maker and which one, to an exchange and which one, is all based on, by law, where we can get what's called best execution for our client. So everything we do has to be optimized for the client. Whoever is offering the best price right now is who we have to give the order to. Now, we don't look at just price. We look at, in the past, have they delivered? They may offer a really good price, but when you go to place the order, it's gone. So we look at the quality of their execution, the quality of their clearing and settling, and the price that they're offering, and we score in real time or near real time all of the different market centers and all of the different market makers, and we will direct the order to the one that's offering our client the best deal and that has the best quality. That's the middle office, and that's happening in real time all day. The back office is where we hold our books and records. It's the big database. So that has all of the balances in your account, your positions, your historical trades. It has everything that we need to do clearing and settling. It has your account history in terms of dollars, money wired in and out. It has demographics on you. We're required to know who you are and to help facilitate trades that meet your level of sophistication. And then lastly, we have a lot of back office data on both securities and security. So the securities are the things you're buying and selling. The security is things like behavioral data, where you normally connect from, how you typically behave. We want to make sure it's really you transacting business in your account. So that's kind of the 3 main offices that we have on the street. Systems of engagement at the top, what we call systems of insight and execution in the middle, and then systems of record are large data stores in the back. Behind that, we've actually got lots of engineering teams. As the Chief Technology Officer, a lot of these folks report into me. So we've got folks like architects that are designing blueprints and patterns and standards across all of our systems. We have application developers that are writing the code I just described. You've got server engineering teams. We run 16,000 servers across our production servers, across our data centers. We probably have closer to 50,000 when you consider all of the non-production stuff. But 16,000, most of those are Linux VMs, but a whole bunch of physicals as well. We've got networking teams. that are doing everything from circuits to software-defined networking to voice over IP to trying to make sure that the Google Hangouts connection is good and solid and works when you guys connect to us. We've got database teams and database admins. We've got QA and QA test teams. We've got storage teams. We're actually running 12 petabytes of storage here at Ameritrade. If you think about the Library of Congress and how much storage it would take to put the Library of Congress onto disk, we can do that 600 times, and that's the largest library in the world. We've got security and fraud teams. We've got messaging and middleware teams. We've got tools teams. I mentioned cybersecurity. We've got desktop engineering teams. We're running about 10,000 desktops. We've got data center engineering teams. We've got tool teams. Our data centers consume 3.7 megawatts of power. If you translated that into iPhones, that's enough power to run 4 million iPhone 6Ss for an hour playing music. So the length of this talk. I don't think there are 4 million iPhone 6Ss out there at this point. But if you think about the kind of power that we're talking about across just our production data centers and the opportunity for data center engineering teams to drive green technologies into the data centers, there are huge, huge efficiencies that we can gain. We're already LEED certified data centers and offices, but there are real opportunities to save tons of energy. So that affects everything from the bill or the electricity that we have to pay to climate change. And then, of course, we hire project managers and scrum masters and all the people it takes to actually run the 100 to 200 projects that we have in flight at any given moment. And so while it looks pretty simple from the outside, there are huge amounts of technology behind the app and behind the web UI, and actually large groups of people. TD Ameritrade has over 1,000, between 1,000 and 2,000 technologists just keeping this stuff running every day. All right, so that's the basics that let you buy and sell stocks and options. Let's talk about some emerging categories that we're seeing out there. The first one, and probably one of the more interesting ones that's showing up today, came from a set of goal planning tools. So you can log into some sites and say, I want to plan for retirement, I want to plan for my college education, my kids' college education, whatever it is, and they'll help you, with some recommendations about how to structure a portfolio. More recently, goal planning tools have started to tie to demographics. So we'll look at the age of one of our clients and try and estimate when they're going to retire and when they might want to start to shift their trading portfolio from a more aggressive stance to a more conservative income generating stance. We can tie into social media triggers. If someone tweets that they're just about to graduate from college, we know that they're about to go from spending money, or their parents' money in some cases, to earning money, and they're going to be at a different stage and probably need a different level of tools and support and guidance. And so we can trigger it off demographics, but we can also trigger it off of posts on Facebook or tweets that are put out there. We actually offer things like social signals that let us not only track you in terms of what you're tweeting, but you can start to look at other people's tweets and use that to start to drive investing. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But these are the goal planning tools that became triggered off of either life events or social media. From them, we've seen the emergence of something called robo-advisors. You may hear of companies called Wealthfront, Betterment, Personal Capital, Future Advisor, Trade King. We have our own called Amerivest. In fact, we were one of, if not the first, robo-advisor. And what a robo-advisor is trying to do is not just help you set a goal, but actually help you with advice and portfolio maintenance over time. So as the market is shifting, if we know what your goals are, we can come back and suggest that you rebalance your portfolio, get out of something and into something else. We don't offer direct advice because we never want to look conflicted, and so we outsource a lot of the picking to an independent company called Morningstar, in our case. If the person giving you advice to buy or sell stock is also charging you to buy or sell stock, there's a little bit of a conflict of interest in our view. So we're very careful about not being the ones generating the advice, but we provide this capability, just as these other firms do, to automate portfolio management. I mentioned before that we're in the business of using technology to commoditize the very expensive things that the wirehouses do, like buying and selling shares of stock. The next thing the wirehouses do that's being commoditized right now today is giving advice on portfolio management. So if you had a lot of money and had your own personal stockbroker, he or she would be suggesting what trades you should make, what mutual funds you should buy and sell. And again, we're applying technology to commoditize what that industry does. Really good for us, really bad for them. On top of that, there's a bunch of other really cool stuff that we're working on. I mentioned before, we'll start with social media. Social media used to be a way of us communicating out to our clients, right? We could tweet out like anybody else, great. But more and more, we're looking at client engagement, looking at client tweets in to us or about us, of course, and client sentiment. Are clients happy, unhappy with the service that they're getting right now? And beginning to do analytics that I mentioned before, social signals, where we will give you, as our client, information about tweets about Apple, tweets about IBM, tweets about Google. Are people net happy with Google, net unhappy with Google? You might want to use that as part of your trading decision. If there are a lot of tweets saying a certain Mexican fast food restaurant chain is having a problem and their customers are all getting sick, I won't mention names, Chipotle. What does that mean in terms of that company's stock, right? Maybe it's about to go down, and if I'm holding that stock, I want to get out of it. Or maybe I want to place a bet that it will go down. It's called shorting a stock, or buying or selling an option against it. And by looking at what other people are saying in social media and having that aggregated up to a sentiment score for you, you can then start to use vast volumes of social data through our analytics. So that's turning social into something that used to be a communication out and is now becoming a two-way street, first to us and now for our clients. Second cool thing you probably don't realize that we do and people like us do, but our data centers have to stay up. That 4 megawatts of power being consumed by those 16,000 servers need to be available 24/7. A couple of years ago, we said, what happens when something breaks? We all scramble to try to fix it, right? What happens if we push a code change and it doesn't work? We scramble to try to debug it, and if you've ever done live demos, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so we asked, what would happen if we hooked a TiVo up to our data center and hit rewind? Can we not try to debug things that break while they're impacting the service to our clients, and instead rewind the data center to a point before it was broken? Well, that's kind of hard to do when something physical fails. So what we did with that concept was we built a duplicate data center 13 miles away from our primary. We keep them synchronized over optical fiber. And if something breaks, I can actually flip a switch, not try to fix it, redirect all my clients to the other data center, or load balance across the two of them. But I can move people away from pieces of tech that are broken without trying to debug it, and then take my time to figure out what went wrong. That dramatically shrinks outage times, right? Because you're not trying to either fail forward or fix in flight. We're doing a lot with cloud. We're doing more and more with cloud. We're using cloud technologies in a private cloud internally to get automation at scale, which means if you've heard of things like containers, think Cloud Foundry, think Docker, stuff like that. There's a lot of experimentation going on with containers right now. We've been using things like Puppet scripts. Chef would be analogous to that, to do large-scale automation, right? How do you script the deployment of hundreds or thousands of VMs? And now more and more we're moving towards OpenStack, which is a standard software interface into infrastructure and is driving the industry towards software-defined everything. Software-defined networks, software-defined storage, software-defined compute, software-defined routers, firewalls, load balancers, everything. And we'll be able to create virtual instances of these things on demand and wire them up to each other on demand with the push of a button. We're also doing cloud hosting. Specifically, we took our disaster recovery data center and said, what if we didn't have the compute? What if we put that compute closer to our clients in a cloud environment, and we virtually extended the data center from that cloud into our facility where we hold the databases, those systems of record. So I can protect, from a cyber perspective, all my data, but I've got this virtual data center that stretches from my physical facility up into a cloud environment. We were the first on the street to do that. We're doing tons of analytics. We look at failure patterns. We used to have 14,000 things break a month. I'm happy to tell you it's 8,500 right now. Now that could be something big, or it could be somebody spilled coffee in their keyboard. Doesn't matter. We do analytics of the patterns of things that break, and with cluster analysis, then look for ways that we can introduce new tech and change the way we work to minimize disruption and to bring down the number of failures, which is how we went from 14,000 to 8,500. We are more resilient than ever before, not by accident, but because we're doing deep pattern analysis across each and every failure. We're doing analytics and personalization. We want to know who you are. We want to know how you behave. If you, we're really trying to tune our experience to you. So if every time you log in, you go to the same page, why shouldn't that page just come up automatically when you log in? If we know that you're holding a lot of IBM stock or Apple stock, maybe you didn't ask for news, but maybe we should give you a heads up when there is news about Apple or IBM. And then we do tons of analytics in cyber and fraud. We're constantly looking at threat vectors and attack patterns. We're constantly looking at what we see as our vulnerabilities, again doing cluster analysis on them, and implementing new and innovative technologies to protect our clients' assets. That kind of takes me into the cyber space. We put a huge amount of resource into cybersecurity. It is one of the biggest areas of investment for us. Those of you who are studying cyber, congratulations. You've got a job before you graduate, as far as I'm concerned. There are different actors that come after financial services firms like us, but they tend to fall into two categories that we see the most activity. Financial crime A lot of that comes out of organized crime, and we see a lot of that activity out of Eastern Europe and West Africa. These are people trying to take over our client accounts and steal their money. More and more, we've been seeing, not at TD Ameritrade, but elsewhere, the industry's been seeing something called ransomware, where malware is used to encrypt the hard drives, the storage, the databases at a firm, and then they get charged money to unlock it. We get a fair amount of phishing attempts. Somebody sends in an email purporting to be a client that wants to wire money out of an account, or voice phishing attempts, where they call into the call center and try to social engineer the change of a client's password so that they can take over the account and then steal the money. They don't actually have to wire the money out, by the way. If I take over your account and I have a trading account of my own somewhere else, I can actually arrange to sell stock in the account I took over and buy it in the other account and sell it below market. And so I get to buy it below market. Or I can sell stock in my real legitimate account at a vastly inflated price and have the account, which isn't mine, that took it over, buy it from me. So I get to capture the money, and the account I took over is stuck with a loss. Data analytics, behavioral patterns all feed into our ability to detect that. I'll talk about some invisible stuff we're doing in just a moment as well. The other key group that we see in financial services are what's called hacktivists. These are people that have a statement to make, that are trying to get attention, draw attention to a cause. They'll do DDoS attacks, they'll do fake websites, they'll do things to destroy data. Obviously, we're in the business of being available and protecting our client assets. We respect somebody's right to make a public statement. We just don't think they have the right to do that at the expense of someone else. And so our job is to protect our clients. Specific to cyber and fraud, I mentioned if you're studying this, you've probably got a job the day you graduate. And the reason why is it's a really dynamic space, right? So we know who we're up against, and we know what their motives are, and we know what methods they tend to use. But they also tend to evolve. And there's this thing going on called coevolution. Coevolution, sorry, there's a little education here. You're going to be back in class. Coevolution says when the lions get faster, the gazelles get faster because slow gazelles get eaten. And when the gazelles get faster, the lions get faster because slow lions starve to death. And so over time, the gazelles get faster and faster, and the lions get faster and faster, and they evolve together. The same thing happens in cybersecurity. As the attackers get more and more sophisticated, the defenders need to get more and more sophisticated or they lose. As the defenders get more and more sophisticated, that sort of weeds out the unsophisticated attackers, and the attackers ratchet up their game. And so there's this constant evolution in capability and in technology going on in the cyberspace. I mentioned that we're doing visible and invisible stuff here. We have all the usual. If you come to our website, you'll log in. We'll ask you for your username and password. What you don't know is what's happening behind the scenes. So we know what device you typically come to us on, and we fingerprint it. Every device has a unique set of characteristics that we can pull through the browser or through the app. Things like what's the screen resolution, what version of the operating system are you running, what patch level do you have. There's a whole bunch of data that makes your device look a little bit different from most other devices. And if you log into our site with a device we don't recognize, doesn't have to be from a cookie, we'll look at the fingerprint and decide, do we want to give you a challenge question? Do we want to step up authentication? We don't just fingerprint devices, by the way. We've got voice prints. When the bad guys call into our call center to social engineer the reset of your password. You know, we know that they work out of call centers themselves, and there are a limited number of people making those calls, and we've got voice prints on a lot of them. So we do things to detect unusual activity, unusual devices, unusual voices, behavioral changes, anything that would lead us to believe that you might not be you. And before we let you take money out of this account, we're going to double check. So there's a whole lot of stuff happening in the background, and it's all driven by technology, and it's all evolving really, really fast. Let's spend just a couple of minutes telling you, if that's what we're doing, what's next? Well, the first thing I'll tell you about what's next from our perspective is that data centers are going to change. And the first big change to data centers happened because of you, happened because of your demographics and your generation and all of the mobile devices that you're carrying today. People my age pointed web browsers at data centers. People your age are trading on apps. And we've seen a dramatic growth in what a lot of people think of as mobile trading, but what I think of as app trading. And what that means is we can't build a data center full of web servers. We've got to build a data center that's structured with APIs that apps talk to. And mobile devices are just one kind of downloadable app. In fact, what people want are apps that are convenient and tuned for their environment. So when I'm walking around, that may be my iPad or my iPhone. Actually, this is Android. I'm a Linux guy. But there are other forms of downloadable apps, right? Download to the desktop, download to a watch, download to my car, download to glass. We will see a fragmentation of downloadable apps, and it will change our data centers forever. That's change number one, and we're investing a lot in this. The second is something called Bitcoin and blockchain. Bitcoin, you've probably heard of, is an electronic currency. Just as we transact in dollars, we may or may not choose to transact in Bitcoin at some point. But underneath Bitcoin is a really cool piece of tech called the blockchain. And it is a distributed database that is eventually consistent. And if we adopt this technology, and we're thinking of adopting it across the street, it would eliminate the need to clear and to some degree to settle. So that thing where it takes 3 days to get your money could go to 1 day or maybe even 0 days. Because instead of trying to match up transactions overnight and facilitate them through DTC, we would have a distributed database at the street level, and whenever somebody put an entry into it, it would be immediately reflected in all other copies. Now, there's cool stuff that blockchain does in open, what they call networks, environments. They've solved problems like distributed trust. There are other features of blockchain we may or may not take advantage of, smart contracts, all kinds of things. This is an area, if you're into databases and into data, you should go look at blockchain. There's a there there. The other thing that's going to change data centers forever is we keep talking about big data, petabytes of data. Big data is about to become bigger data and actually is going to become humongous data. What we've seen right now is a shift in data being produced originally from things in my data center created data, and I could analyze it, I could store it, I could do all kinds of cool things. When we introduced social, Twitter, Facebook, MySpace, if you're my age, what happened was instead of things in my data center creating information, creating data, data was suddenly created by millions and millions of people. And the volume went up dramatically. And we're all trying to figure out how to deal with huge amounts of data. We call that big data. In fact, data growth right now is higher than network bandwidth growth. I'm going to say that again. Data growth is higher than network bandwidth growth. That means if the trend continues, we will not be able to bring data back into our data centers. It will have to live where it is created, which is going to drive cloud adoption at a new scale. That will fundamentally change data centers. The shift to humongous data comes when not just people create data, but things create data. When my door and my window starts tweeting, right? That may not help me as a stock trader, but when the robo-advisors, which are pieces of software, start tweeting, right? There are more things than people, and the volume of data is going to explode again with the Internet of Things and the Internet of Virtual Things. And as that happens, the last grasp of hope that some of us have that we can somehow bring this data back into our data centers to do sentiment analysis, to provide capabilities to you, that's all going to go away. We're going to suddenly realize one day that the data is so humongous that all we can do is leave it in the cloud, and we're going to need new forms of analytics to do distributed analytics of all this info out there. So again, data center architecture is going to change dramatically. You build data centers with the expectation that you're going to run them for 10 or 20 years. We are thinking now about what data centers will look like a decade from now. The last big thing that I'll tell you about, in case you want to go do something really cool on graduation, is that the next UI may not even be a download app UI. The next UI may be no UI, and it may be voice. And we've seen experimentation with this. You know, Ford's got their sync for in-vehicle. Google played with glass. They got out of that business, but they're about to get right back into it again. Make no mistake about it, they did not back away from glass. Gen 2 is about to get released. We're seeing things like the Amazon Echo with Alexa, right? People want to interact by talking more and more. And so we're going to have to figure out if the new user interface in some environments, in fact in a lot of environments, is an app with just a voice front end. And how complete is that? I can't really draw you a stock chart over time showing you how the price has changed over time. I can describe it to you. Is that good enough? How complete does it need to be? I can facilitate buying and selling shares. I can give you alerts. I can update you on news. And so there's a lot of research going on right now into things like, can Alexa trade stock? And can you talk to Amazon and use that kind of user interface, or talk to your car, or talk to your glasses, and use a voice interface as the next UI. So a lot of cool stuff going on right now. TiVoing data centers, cloud, cyber, analytics, but even more cool stuff that we're working on in our advanced tech teams, where we're prototyping a lot of these capabilities and trying to figure out what they mean for us and our industry next. We also, obviously do a bunch of other cool things to get new ideas about what's coming even behind this. So we're constantly doing tech talks, meetups, hackathons, all the usual stuff there. We're playing with all new coding technologies, new languages, declarative schemas and systems for creating instances of things. There's a whole lot of R going on in the R&D, in the advanced tech teams, beyond just coding Java and Hadoop. So I am going to stop there. I'm just going to summarize the industry that I'm in, the TD Ameritrade is in, the discount brokerage industry, is all about leveraging technology to disrupt inefficient, human-based ways of doing things. In this case, it happens to be buying and selling stock. There are a huge number of scientists and engineers working on solving a large number of problems behind the scenes, keeping things running today, but trying to figure out at large scale how we're going to do this next month, next year, and a decade from now. And we're also constantly looking for the best and brightest engineers that we can find in order to help us, because we know that when we bring people in, they come in with new thinking and new ideas. And so this is my recruiting pitch to you. If you have an interest in any of these spaces as you're graduating, make sure that you take a look at some of the openings we have. I'm going to stop there. We're at 5 o'clock, a few minutes after. I know we started a few minutes late. What I'm going to do now is just open it up to Q&A. No questions. Am I still in the right meeting?
I actually got a question. So you said that, well, first of all, if you help your clients make money, how do you make money in like the company? How does the company make money?
I'm sorry, can you get a little closer to the mic?
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, cool.
Question was, if your company is giving, software to your customers and other people for free, how are you making money?
Yeah, so we make money two ways. First, when you buy or sell stock, we charge a flat fee. When you buy or sell options, we charge a flat fee. It's like $10. We don't care how many shares you buy or sell. It's $10 to do a trade. That's way number one. Way number two is we actually, we're not a bank. If you choose to put your money into a TD Bank mutual fund overnight, they pay you interest on it. We're separate from TD Bank. We just have a similar name. They pay you interest on it. They pay us essentially a commission for giving them that business. So the two ways we make money are on what we call interest-sensitive deposits, like sweeping your money into mutual funds. There's another way where if you want to sell stock you don't own, we will loan it to you. And we charge for that loan. So you do that if you're shorting a stock. You'll actually borrow stock you don't have and sell it, get the money, and you're hoping that the stock's going to go down so that you can buy it back later for free and replace the shares. But if you take a loan out against us, we obviously charge interest on that loan. If you sweep to a mutual fund, you get a commission. The main source of revenue is through transactions. You ask us to do something for you, we charge a $10 commission for trades. Yeah.
So with social, how do you handle like the feedback, like the noise that's in there? I mean, there's a lot of ignorance on social media. There's a lot of bots on social media. There's a lot of, oh, I heard this, and so therefore I'm going to share what my friend said. My friend doesn't know anything, but now there's 4 people saying the same thing, and so
yep.
Someone else gets back like on the same bandwagon. So how do you like filter through that to actually get meaningful insight?
Yeah, so we do it okay today. I think we could do better. This is one of the areas of analytics that we're putting a ton of research into. Today we can generate a sentiment score. Are people net happy, net unhappy around a stock? But to your point, there's a fair amount of noise. I think Microsoft may have learned that the Twitterverse is both noisy and can be a bit mean when they unleashed a learning system into it. I assume you all know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Okay. So you're absolutely right. I would not personally buy or sell stock based just on what I learned from social, but it is an input, right? And it's one of many. Now, we are working on smarter filters. We're working with IBM, who has a cognitive platform called Watson, on can they actually separate the noise from the real meaning. And they're starting to do things like, and they look at individual Twitter users based on their past behavior and profile them a little bit. I know that sounds like a bad word, but it doesn't have to be. Profile them a little bit to say, yeah, this is somebody who is generally a good corporate or a good citizen in the community versus this is someone who just engages in flame wars and spreading noise, and maybe de-emphasize the ones that aren't really as well behaved. There's a lot of work going on in this space. If you've got an interest in analytics, come talk to us.
Thank you. Another question. So you said that the social engineering aspect, when you do have voice phishing calls, you have profiles on people who voice phish often because they're in data centers. You have their voice. Do you do the same thing with customers?
Not yet. I want to.
That's good.
One of my problems is, there are, I don't know, 4 billion potential bad callers, and I've got 6.5 million clients. So do I want to try to voice print everybody who's not a client, or do I want to try to voice print the clients I have? Historically, we've spent a lot of time and effort in cyber trying to identify the bad guys. And I actually think it's time to flip the model and start to focus more on identifying you're a good guy and just assume if you're not a good guy, you're a bad guy. So we haven't gotten there yet, but that's certainly an area of interest.
Cool, thank you.
Yep.
So I got a question on when you said you try to get the best deal for your client.
Can you, I'm sorry, again, a little closer to the mic would help.
Yeah, I got it.
So when you try to get the best deal for the customer or the client, you have a client. What if you have 2 clients, one who's a buyer, one who's a seller, and you said you're going to match them with the one that's going to get the best deal? But what if the best deal for the buyer is not the best deal for the seller? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so if the best deal is not on our platform, we go somewhere else. We will not match one of our clients to another client if it's not in both of their interests. We will go out to wherever the better deal for both of them are, right? Because we have to optimize for both. We're not allowed to play favorite. Now, we do look at the order they come in, and we have to transact business in the order that it came to us. We're not allowed to put anybody in front. There's no cutting the line. But if they came in at the same time and there's a great deal for the seller, for example, but it's not on my platform, even though I've got somebody who will take that deal on my platform, I have to go out to the street. By law, I have to get them the best deal.
All right.
I have a question. How are you all differentiating yourself from other robo-advisors like Betterment, Sigfig, and all these?
Yeah, so a couple of things. The Betterment guys are interesting. The first thing I'll say is scale. They actually don't have a lot of customers if you add it up. They got a lot of investment. That industry has taken more than $1 billion of venture capital. But if you look at the size, the number of accounts that those firms have, and the amount of revenue that they're generating, I'm not sure they're standalone businesses. In fact, one of them, I think it was Trade King, just got acquired. Another one, Wealthfront, has focused more and more on sort of a more institutional model. So they're all trying to figure out a business that makes sense for them in the long term. We've been at this for a while. I'm not saying that they don't have things that we don't do, we don't have things that they don't do, right? There will be sort of an evolution of the space. But the first thing I'll tell you is, with a high degree of confidence, they won't all exist in 5 years, and we will. And so if you're putting your money someplace, you probably want to put it someplace that's going to exist, right? Trade King advisors or customers all woke up and at least they found a home. That's probably the single biggest thing, is the size and scale of our platform allows us to do things in and we're going to be here for a while. Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question. Does TD Ameritrade have any formal like innovation group that works on looking at the competitive analysis for startup companies and working on that R&D?
Yeah. Yeah. We do. It's called Advanced Technology. They report to me. Now we get innovation coming out of all over the company, right? And we do hackathons specifically because I want good ideas that didn't necessarily come out of advanced tech. But we do have a team called Advanced Technology. Their job is to build prototypes of new and emerging stuff that our business-facing developers then adopt. And my advanced tech team, so that they don't become sort of ivory tower, get measured like a venture capitalist measures a portfolio. So I give them money, I hire people, they spend it. And then as they build prototypes, we measure whether or not those prototypes are actually adopted by our business-facing developers. And if they are, they've kind of sold their prototype, and they get credit for that. And if not, they don't get credit. And then across their portfolio over time, just like a venture capitalist has a portfolio, I look for them to have a positive return for the company. And so it's a VC model within a corporation that is highly targeted at doing things that are meaningful to us. Now, they do a couple of flyers. They do some things where they swing for the fences, like voice. And I will give them partial credit if they develop a capability that we're likely to use in the future, even if they didn't have an exit today into the business. And so there's a little more scoring to their measurement, but that's what they do.
Thanks. I have a question.
Yeah.
Going off of the previous question, if we were interested in joining the advanced technology team, how do we go about doing so?
So the easiest thing to do is, we like lots of folks post all of our openings online, and when they've got openings and open recs for headcount, they will be. I think you go to employment at tdameritrade.com, maybe under About Us or something. But if you the first test of navigation skills is, can you find where we hit it? But if you can, you'll see all the openings we have in tech, including advanced tech.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Is this interesting?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. If there aren't any others, I'm going to say thank you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your attention. I was actually going to try to get out there today, but looking at the traffic, looking at the travel, I was afraid I'd miss it. And you guys would get the free cookies, but we wouldn't get to have the chat. So it probably worked out better in the end, despite the hiccups at the beginning. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. You all have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.